Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer. Welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And I have my buddy Rod here who had a special request to do a spoiler talk of season one of Shrinking. Which, if you haven't gotten on this train, what the hell is wrong with you? Uh, but Rod, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, well, look, I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk about maybe the best show of the year. I know we've got The Last of Us out and we've got other stuff. I mean, Succession's out
God,
right now, but
watching this on a Friday and The Last of Us for me on a Monday with my wife because she's in bed by 9. Like just something
mhm.
else for a few weeks. But this is created by our buddies Brett Goldstein, aka Roy F. and Kent, and Bill Lawrence
I
from
didn't know it was Brett Goldstein till like episode 3 or 4. I was like, who created this show? Who's in
Yep,
charge of wait, what? No wonder. I was like, why does this have such like a Ted Lasso feel to it?
yeah. So Goldstein and Lawrence from Ted Lasso plus Jason Segel.
My man.
Which makes sense because they wrote and created Ted Lasso with Jason Sudeikis. So obviously bringing in a specific talent, and we have directors like James Ponsoldt, who did 4 of the 10 episodes, who like the Spectacular Now at the end of the tour, which arguably is one of Jason Segel's best performances.
I've
That
heard
movie.
that's his best performance of his entire career. I still have yet to
Yep.
watch. I'm a Siegel fan, so I got to get on that.
Yep. And Zach Braff directed an episode.
Which one did he direct?
That's a good question. Mr. South Orange, New Jersey, uh, own Zach Braff.
You had to throw that in it, didn't you? You just had to throw that in there.
Well, I just watched The Good Person, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is really New Jersey. I'm like, oh, Zach Braff's from New Jersey. What a surprise. Trying to
Oh, he
see.
did episode 8.
Boop.
Yeah. I
So,
think that was one of my favorite episodes, actually. I think that might be my favorite episode of the season.
so basically, we have a grieving therapist played by Jason Segel, who
Coming in
we
lately.
see with escorts and drugs and alcohol and all kinds of fun stuff at the beginning of this. It's how we're introduced late at night. And his wife has passed away. He's still grieving in very unhealthy ways,
Hmm.
and he's disconnected from his daughter. And basically, his fellow therapists at his office, his neighbor, all trying to figure out ways to helping him get back on track. And he decides to have an epiphany of, does therapy have to be the way that everybody thinks it is, and starts making some highly unethical and
Hmm.
bold decisions in terms of how he's treating his patients and befriending one of them. So basically, we got Jason Segel's Jimmy, our main character. Probably my newest celebrity crush, Jessica Williams, is Gabby, who is his colleague and also his deceased wife's best friend.
Right.
We have Paul, Harrison Ford, which this might be some of the best work Harrison Ford's done his whole entire career is playing a therapist who's running this office. We have Sean played by Luke Tenney, who is the young man that Jimmy befriends and, you know, has no boundaries with in terms of being his therapist. Uh, Lukita Maxwell, who plays Alice's daughter, and Krista Miller, Liz, the neighbor next door, and the most unexpectedly hilarious part of the show, her husband, Derek, played by Ted McGinley. So, first off, Rod, what are your general thoughts of the show?
How much time do I have? Listen, I was excited for this show because of Jason Segel. He is,
Mm,
one of my favorite actors probably working today. He is a part of my favorite show of all time, How Much Your Mother.
mhm.
He's in one of my favorite rom-coms of all time, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. he is just a terrific talent. And whenever he's in a project, I immediately just I have to watch it, Shane. And he was also in that movie, one of my favorite movies of 2021, Our Friend, with the lovely Dakota Johnson and Casey Affleck. He was fantastic in that too.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what to expect from this show. I just saw Jason Segel and Harrison Ford were doing a show on Apple TV Plus, and I'm like, all right, well, I might as well check it out. I mean, Apple TV Plus hasn't disappointed me yet, which I want to talk about a little later. But after that first episode, Shane, I said, holy crap, this is going to be something special.
Mhm.
I just wish Apple TV Plus didn't release it at the same time as The Last of Us was running, because I feel like a lot more eyes would be on the show had it not been for The
Mhm.
Last of Us. But I also too, Shane, I don't think a lot of people are signed up for Apple TV Plus either.
I think it's still one of the lesser appreciated streaming services, which in general, most of their stuff's really good.
That's what I was saying. I was saying this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. Like they have a Best Picture winner in their library. They have numerous just award-worthy shows. Was with the morning show,
They're having Killers of the Flower Moon coming from Martin
exact Killers of the Flower
Scorsese.
Moon. I mean, why am I forgetting? Why am I drawing the blank on the Dickinson with Haley Steinfeld, which I think is a very underrated show.
Oh, I love that show to pieces so much.
It's wonderful. The what's the other thing? I'm thinking of another show. Ted Lasso. I don't know why I was drawing a blank on Ted Lasso, which is probably the crown jewel of Apple TV Plus, Shane.
Which
Uh,
for some reasons on Wednesdays now.
It's
Um,
weird, very
I guess
weird.
they're trying to expand their because like it is unrelenting on a quick Apple TV Plus side note. They have like at least three, four, five shows running at the same time, and they all come out on Friday. And it's just like spread it out. And then now it's like now they're all dumping on Wednesday. They're like, you won't get us Disney. Uh,
Well, you can't stop there. Like with Severance. I heard The Servant's a pretty good show. I haven't started that, but I've heard nothing but good things.
the second and third season waver a bit, but that first and fourth season are really impressive. Like
So
the last season of Servant, like damn, and that just wrapped up.
okay,
Um,
but yeah,
the whole thing.
and then my my buddy Jacob Beals got me on this show, Mythic Quest.
Oh
Oh
my
my God.
God, I love Mythic Quest so
It's
much.
hilarious. So freaking good. And the I'll say is the episode with Kirsten Milioti and Jake Johnson. One of the
They
best episodes of television I've
they
ever
know
seen.
how to do a standalone episode like nobody's business. That show. Um, and obviously Apple has a great track record, and this coming from the creators of Ted Lasso because I remember when Ted Lasso dropped the first season, three episodes that first Friday, back when Ted Lasso was 30 minutes a pop.
Those were
Like
the days.
15 minutes an episode. Um, and I watched all three of them. Like it was one of some of the easiest watching. I'm just like gobbling up. I'm just like, did I just fall in love with a show like the first time, like first couple episodes I watched it?
Hmm.
This had that feeling. Like within that first episode, I'm just like, I love the show. I thought going to this year, Harrison Ford was going to kill it on 1923 and roll television. Guess what? Wrong show. Shrinking was the show that really showed his talents. This is a stacked cast. Everybody's great. It's really hard to pick like favorite characters and favorite performances because like so many of these characters are just great and have so many layers. This deals with so much from grief to mental health issues to relationships to making bad sexual decisions with people
So many bad sexual
to
decisions made in this show.
health
Oh my God.
issues and dealing with estranged children and just all of these things. And it somehow is such a smooth drink, but never feels like it pulls punches. Like, I feel like it hits so well while also being absolutely hilarious. And
That's
that's
why it doesn't need to pull any punches because it's doing its job so well.
Mhm.
And you talk about layers, and every character in this show, even the husband, um, Derek,
Yeah.
layers to his character. But one of the things I liked about this, Shane, one of my favorite characters in the show, Liz,
Mhm.
there's this thing where she's kind of going through abandonment issues with her son because her son's
Yep.
off in college now. And so
Mhm.
she's using uh, Alice, Jason Segel's daughter's
Mhm.
character, as sort of a replacement. And there's sort of like that through line there, but also kind of just her not really having any friends outside of her family.
Which I was 100% anti Liz the first couple episodes. It's
Yeah.
like, you're taking Jimmy's daughter from him. And but like how this show just turned, well, Ted Lasso did it too. There are some characters that you just hate at the beginning of that show, and then bam, you're just like, wait, when did I fall in love with them? Um, and it's
Well,
just
except for
like
one. One had the opposite. Our good buddy Nate.
F Nate. um, but like it so effortlessly takes these characters on journeys and adds layers to them. And like specifically with Liz, I love her dynamic with Gabby.
Oh,
When they finally become friends, it's so great. And then I one of my favorite moments of this show is when Liz is like I need to be home, like to her husband is like, honey, I've been working all this time. I'm doing my own thing at this point. And I'm just like, you go, Derek. Derek's like the most functioning human being in this show. Like he's that one person in a group of people that like doesn't have any mental health issues, neurotypical, actually like is attuned to his feelings, yet seems like he's a complete dumbass husband. But like underneath, he has his stuff together. He just knows what he wants in life and he lives his best life. And honestly, I think everybody wishes they could be a little bit of Derek.
they used Derek the right amount of this show. They didn't
Yep.
overuse him. They didn't underuse him. They used him just the right amount. Whenever there was a dramatic moment, they would always cut to Derek and Liz because their moments were always so freaking great, so hysterical. And it was sort of kind of like that relief we needed after like a heavy dramatic moment with like Harrison Ford's character or Jason Segel's character. They were great. He was great comic relief.
I I think one of the most emotionally impactful moments in this whole entire season for me was when like because Lily Robb plays Harrison Ford's daughter and he's leaving his home and he has one of his episodes where he can't move and then
Hmm.
he just like Harrison Ford just gets so frustrated and like he does that Harrison Ford thing when he's angry and I'm just like, oh, I felt that.
Yeah.
And it was such a great moment. And that's the thing because like Harrison Ford has amazing range in this show because he goes from like silly, grumpy, sarcastic grandpa to a very vulnerable person.
Hmm.
And also watching him high was hilarious.
So freaking funny, Shane. Oh my goodness. I'm watching that episode. I'm like, this is what that's when I said, okay, if anyone in this entire show is going to get an Emmy nomination, it's got to be Harrison Ford. It has to be.
This whole
He
entire
is.
cast deserves Emmy nominations. And if Harrison Ford doesn't win an Emmy for this, I'm gonna jump through the TV and just punch the Emmys right
Well,
in
I
the face.
mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? How many people have actually watched this show, though, Shane? That's the thing. That's what's going to hurt this show,
Mm-hmm.
or this show's chances of getting nominated for a lot of stuff. I think it. I mean, it should. I think
Yep.
it's the best show of the year, but it just
It's
goes
gonna be
back to that thing.
hard for me because like I'm a big proponent of weekly television. I am over binging. I don't
Yeah.
think binging does what it needs to do for television. It's convenience, but it doesn't build the show. And there's nothing what I love more than be waking up on a day and being excited when I get home from work or I wake up that morning, depending on if I watch it with my wife or not, that I'm gonna watch that show that day. Nothing was more exciting than getting home on Friday night, having date night with my wife, ordering in and watching Shrinking for the past 10 weeks. Like
That's awesome.
that was special. And when a show can make you that excited, that's exciting. Like every Thursday morning when ABC decides to have a new episode of Abbott Elementary on Wednesday night, I get excited to watch that when I wake up the next morning. Um, and like when Comedy Central decides to show a new episode of South Park, despite the fact there's six of them and has taken like 12 weeks to get through six episodes. That
What is
gets me.
up with that?
I don't
It's
know. The one thing that I'll give to streaming services, at least they're consistent. Like I don't have to guess and check TV Guide every day to just be like, did my show have an episode last night? Um, but one of the worst things in the world is like I watch like everything is getting up and like, ugh, I have to watch a new episode of this because I'm not into the show. But when it hits, that's something special. And this show hit me in a way that I'm just like, I was excited. Well, besides the fact it was Friday, I was excited to get home and watch this. And like, I needed to watch it immediately when I got home. I couldn't wait anymore.
so I kind of I differ and I'm the same with you. I think binging is good depending on the show.
Hmm.
One of my favorite shows the past few years has been the show You. And they kind of did this thing that annoyed me, but I understood why they did it, where they broke up this past season into two parts.
What really grinds my gears when streaming services are like part one and two of a season. No, they're two separate seasons. Stop calling them that. Anyway, I digress.
No, no, I look, I agree, but I thought it was worth it because season or see now you got me saying it. Part one of that season was so interesting and so fast. It's such a departure from what the show You usually does. And then part two kind of got back to its roots a little bit, but it was just the thing about weekly television or weekly releases is the conversation you can have with your friends, the stuff
Hmm.
that you and I can talk about with you or people on Instagram or friends outside of Instagram about like, yeah, did you watch that? Did you watch this? One of my favorite things was um when Game of Thrones was on, I would go to over my buddy's house and every Sunday he would have this big, House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones party and
Hmm.
watch parties and do all that fun stuff. Um, but I think binging, depending on the show, I think it all depends on the show. Like a show like Shrinking, it wouldn't have worked. I don't think I would have appreciated the show enough if it had been a straightforward binge. As much as I was waiting for that next episode,
Hmm.
I'm glad we got those weekly releases. I think Netflix does it a lot. I mean, they do the binging thing way too much. They do it for certain shows now, where it's like Arcane will release 3 episodes every week.
Hmm.
Amazon Prime's doing that now, Shane. I think they did it with that show Daisy Jones and the Six, which, by the way, is an incredible show that I'm in the middle of right now. They release like 3 episodes every week. Um,
I have so many feelings about streaming services and their release schedules, but that is a conversation
yeah, that's a whole other
for
conversation. But
for
back to
another
Shrinking.
episode of this
Yeah,
talk
that.
show. But like, I like this did really thrive on the building the buzz every week
Mhm.
because I'm like, I need to know what's happening with Jimmy. Is Jimmy and Alice gonna reconnect? Are they gonna reconnect? Is Jimmy and Sean gonna are they gonna be okay? Is Paul finally gonna tell his daughter about his illness? Is he gonna get over his insecurity about stuff?
I do want to get to one thing it's the
Mhm.
one gripe I didn't like with this first season. As much of a perfect season I think it is. Was it just me, Shane, or did they feel like they kind of got away from that Jimmy Sean relationship a little too? Like they kind of put that to the side when Brian got in the picture. I feel like Sean's involvement kind of lessened a little bit in favor of Harrison Ford's story and some others, but which don't get me wrong, I still like what they did with Sean, but I just felt like
You know what? Yeah, I feel like Sean became like at least the last four episodes maybe became more of like he went to the art show
Hmm.
with Gabby and Liz, and like he was a fun like he became a comic relief in
Right.
that subplot. And do I think Sean should be relegated to that in this show? No. Sean deserves better. And that was an awkward tightrope of like his dynamic with Alice and like what's going on between the two of them. But you're right. I just didn't really think about it, but because like I feel like Jimmy and Sean is really like the core like Jimmy and Alice and Jimmy and Sean are the two of the most important subplots of the show because it's Jimmy's personal life and his professional life, those
Right.
connections. And obviously they never waver from Alice,
Mm-mm.
his daughter, but like yeah, I do feel like Sean kind of like got sidelined a bit in favor of some of the other characters because like
Yeah.
they really started diving into Paul's life, even
Yes.
with uh like sexy doctor lady that Paul started dating. And you got to deal with a lot more of like him trying to reconnect with his daughter. Even Gabby getting like that focus of like her ex and stuff like that. Um and how many more times Gabby and Jimmy are gonna sleep together.
Where do you think?
They're catching feelings.
Well, they're definitely catching feelings. I don't see it ending well.
No,
I don't see that going to go over well
no.
at all.
I feel like there's too much baggage for
There is,
that relationship to work out.
there is, and honestly too, because I thought at first I was like, you know what, the Heidi Gardner's character, Grace, I was like, there's something going on between these two. They have really good chemistry also,
Mhm.
but she's kind of like too in and out to really kind of get you to really well
Well,
until yes that final episode. Um, I thought they were going to do something with those two. Looks like we might get that next season.
something's definitely happening next season after
Yeah.
you watch Grace murder her husband. Um,
Well, because it's funny, right? Because she mentioned they were talking, and she mentioned it pushing him, and I was like, "Oh, that's funny. That's funny." No, she actually killed him.
and I feel like there could be some consequences, like because that's Jimmy has yet to have the consequences of his like he's had some consequences on a personal with how what he's been doing with his clients because like the dynamics between them have gotten cloudy and made some awkward moments. He hasn't gotten any from a professional level.
Right.
And I feel like there's going to be some big stuff happening in the second season based off of what happens with that.
I feel like, yeah, I think they're setting something up for at least probably by the end of season two, he might lose his license or lose his
Mhm.
job at least to practice therapy. Is that how you say practice therapy? Is that a thing?
I
Practice
have a
therapy? Is that how you
master's in
say it?
accounting. I do not know. So
But that was funny. That's what I feel like they're going to be setting up in terms
yeah,
of that
and
chain.
that's going to be a really and I think it'll strain his relationship with Paul because Paul was never a
Yeah.
fan of this outside the box stuff that he was doing. And that's going to be even more heartbreaking because they finally were coming together in a meaningful way. And that's going to be some hard stuff to process, them being pulled apart because of that.
Well, I think too, if because technically she told him what she did. So what's this going to do to Jimmy and Alice? That's what's going to break my heart, Shane.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, I was telling you before we start recording, excuse me, that was like, this finale is really safe. Everything's kind of going kind of how I predicted and going, I was like, I mean, it's a sweet episode, great way to end the season, but that was a little safe. Then they
And
had that
then,
MCU little cliffhanger post-credit scene of, oh yeah, by the way, we'll be back for season two.
yeah,
Um,
cliffhanger getting thrown off a cliff. Yep, there you go. That was it's a this show just hits that same special place that Ted Lasso does in terms of being able to bounce. Like, I was watching the new episode of Ted Lasso today, heartbroken. Like, I have this on in the background while I'm doing some work. I'm just sitting there like,
well, there's
because
a
of one
part,
phone call,
yeah, that I
I'm
was
just
like
gonna.
that. I don't think I've ever cried during a phone call a phone call conversation in a long time. That was a pretty devastating phone call
Yep.
chain.
And that's the beauty of these shows and how much impact they can put in something as simple as a phone call or in something as simple as like and finding so much meaning in just like what is it, fun dip, but
Yeah.
just something as simple as that and what that can mean for like these dynamics, or Paul's hat that keeps coming back, and like all of it, and there's just so much packed in there. And
Well, that's the thing, right? It's the feeling you get after the episode ends. I was making the comparison of like my favorite shows right now. Like if I like rank my top five, like my top two are easily Shrinking and The Last of Us. But the thing with The Last of Us is I need therapy after watching The Last of Us every week. Like I needed serious counseling. And I played the games and I knew it was gonna happen. And yet I still needed like therapy. I
I
needed
didn't
I needed
play the
shrinking.
games, and I'm sitting there
Oh.
watching this week to week, just being like, this is messed up.
But with shrinking, I get that other feeling of like, man, I'm just watching good people going through rough times and stuff, but man, I always have a smile on my face. Like, I
Right?
forgot what episode it was. I think it was episode 8 when Jimmy grounds his daughter. And it's like that should be like a devastating moment, like a sad moment. But no, it's like Jimmy's growing. You're just
Yep.
happy to see that growth in
Yes.
Jimmy. It's like, man, I'm happy for you, Jimmy.
Yep.
You know?
It's and like I love Jason Segel. I think he's one of my low key like hidden gem actors because I
Oh
don't
yeah.
like so many people just know him from How I Met Your Mother, and I feel like don't take him that seriously. And like now I'm just thinking, forgetting Sarah Marshall's like, you need a psychiatrist. I don't want to go to a psychiatrist. And just like,
Well, you think about those shit, like on How I Met Your Mother, he has some of the show's best dramatic moments.
well, here's the thing. I've never watched How I Met Your Mother. So
Oh my Lord. Shannon,
actually,
why are you why
let
are you
let me
breaking my
change.
heart?
So let me change my response. I have literally only watched the last 10 episodes of Your Mother.
Oh wait, that's right. We've had this conversation already. I
Yes.
remember. But
But Jason Segel at times in this show is a human muppet, and he's absolutely hilarious. And I love every second of it, which he was the perfect person for the Muppet movie.
here
Because
we go.
he is a Muppet of a man. A Muppet of a man. Um, but then there's moments like he can really act. The end of the tour, that really showed it. And James Ponsoldt, I think, really knows how to get that out of him. And like Jessica Williams, she's so charismatic. I absolutely fell in love with Gabby. And I think she might be one of my favorite characters on the show. I did not think Harrison Ford had this in him at this
I thought he
point.
was just gonna go through the motions on this show. I thought it was just gonna be, the regular Harrison
No,
Ford.
he did not.
No, he did
Not
not.
at all.
Mm-mm.
And like he does everything like that moment with him and Jessica Williams in the car singing along to Sugar Ray was one of the most amazing moments of
That
television.
might still be my favorite moment of this entire show, or at least season one, Shane. I don't know. Just because I didn't think I would ever see that in my entire life. Harrison Ford doing carpool karaoke. It's
Yeah.
just, it is perfect. It is absolute perfection.
And Luke Tenney, I think is gonna really break out from this show because I think Sean is such a great character
He's gonna
and
get a lot more roles.
he does such great work. Michael Yuri Brian as the best friend. Oh my god,
Where
he's
have I
so
seen
much.
him before? I feel like I've seen him before, Shane.
I'm looking at like he was in Ugly Betty. I've never watched that show.
I watched a
Apparently,
couple episodes.
um, but like I know I just saw him in another film that I just got a screener for, which was s- uh Summoning Sylvia, which is like about a haunted getaway gay bachelor party. And he's like the future husband of the main character in it. And like he has some fun moments. I love Lakita Maxwell, and now I know why I recognize her from Generation. What a what a forgotten show over on HBO Max that kind of just came and went. I think she did some great work here. I think she has a really bright future. And the major league fan in me, who when I was younger, who had Major League Back to the Minors on VHS, watching a Ted McGinley just be a horrible piece of crap manager of the Minnesota Twins, coming in here and watch because like I've never really watched Married with Children. Like I understand like he's the neighbor or like
I don't
the
know. I've never watched Married with Children, so I don't. I don't.
so like he's one of the supporting characters on it. This man knows how to get a laugh. And he just strolls on into a scene, drops like one or two lines, and just steals the scene and just walks out.
Hmm.
And there's just so much talent in this show and so many great characters. It's great writing. It has great emotional beats and everything. Like it's one of those kinds of things where it's like every time we go to a different subplot, I'm still engaged.
Well, that's the thing, right, Shane? There's a couple things I wanted to respond to what you were saying. In terms of cast, I mean, for a comedy ensemble, this rivals Ted Lasso in terms
Mm,
of just likability, everyone being on their A game. Everyone is on their A plus plus game. I
mhm.
mean, I didn't know how I was going to feel about Lakita Maxwell as Alice because when she's first introduced, it's like, ugh, she's just going to play the moody, teenage girl. I don't, do we really have to? But like we were talking about earlier, layers. She has layers to her character. There's so much
Yep.
more about her. Um, Sean, even though he kind of gets sidelined a little bit in the back half of the season, those first like 5 or 6 episodes, Shane, he's kind of like the second most important character of the show, and
Yeah.
he's going through a lot, and the way he handles his dramatic moments, so well done.
Mhm.
I'm with you though. If I had to like choose my three favorite characters of the show, Harrison Ford's probably my favorite character.
Mm.
Jessica Williams, Gabby, who just that art show sequence. Oh my Lord.
It was
Yeah,
her.
Jessica Williams. And then it's a toss up. It's probably Jason Segel, who I just knocked out of the park. But I love Kristen Miller's Liz. Liz is
Mhm.
an outstanding character. And I hope they don't not sideline her, Shane, but don't, give her even more to do in season two. Because I think there's more to explore with her character and relationships with these
Mhm.
characters. So I'm looking forward to season two. And I think another thing you kind of mentioned, this show does so well, which a lot of comedy shows sometimes have trouble balancing. They balance the comedy and the dramatic moments so well in terms of they don't want to, have a dramatic moment, but keep it there, but then also, have still have those lighter moments, but that balance, Shane. It's all about the balance sometimes, and it does a really good job of handling that.
There's so many moments where I feel like I should not be laughing because I'm also very sad right now.
Hmm.
But like it's like it gets all of it all at once. And that's a really tough tone to pull off. And I've like Brett Goldstein and Bill Lawrence obviously are really, really talented. And coming out of nowhere.
Yeah,
Like, and then Brett Goldstein gets to be Hercules. Uh, interesting.
maybe. I don't know what's going on in the MCU right now. I don't know when that's gonna happen.
2035.
Sounds about right.
um, it's I will keep watching shows they make. If Brett Goldstein's like if Shrinking continues the way it does, and I think Ted Lasso season 3 is still killing it for me. He might be up there with like there's very few like TV creators that I follow. Like I'm much more of a movie person, but like if I find out tomorrow that Vince Gilligan's launching a new show, I'm all over that. Like I'm good. I'm ready to go. I got so excited for Lucky Hank because I thought it was a Vince Gilligan show.
I'm
um,
actually starting that show when I get back from my trip because I've heard pretty good things about that. And AMC Plus is another service that just pumps out great content, Shane.
except it's the world's worst actual streaming service.
Oh, it's a terrible service. Terrible.
That
It's
app is
awful.
trash,
Well, I told
which
you what
is
to do. Just go on. I just subscribed to Amazon Prime.
exactly. I dumped my AMC Plus app and then just got the channel on Amazon and have because I could not deal with like once Better Call Saul was back, I'm like, I can't deal with this crap anymore. I need my stuff. I got my stuff. Show devastated me.
Let me ask you this. I want to ask you a question because I think Apple TV Plus right now is probably the second best service on we have. I still think HBO Max is the best in terms of this library and its original content they keep up. Because I mean, HBO just shits out gold all the time, Shane. It's stupid.
You don't even need to think about anything that like Max does. Just look at
Right.
HBO,
Exactly.
and that's enough. Like, in what world do you wrap up House of the Dragon, then throw out there The Last of Us, go right into the last season of Succession? Barry's last season is going to be starting. Just like,
Well, I'm gonna tell you this too, Shane. I know we're going a little on a tangent here, but um, Elizabeth Olsen's going for that Emmy this year. That Love and
oh,
Death. She's coming. She's coming for that Emmy. She's like, okay, you didn't get me for WandaVision. Okay, all right. Let me go over to HBO and get that Emmy now. She's getting that Emmy this
well,
year, Shane.
and I might have been one of 5 people that watched the last season of his Dark Materials. But like,
Oh yeah, I remember that.
even that was like a really really well done show. It completely fell under the radar, but like especially for HBO standards. But like you got HBO, no matter how much Discovery wants to murder it, it's still going. Apple just puts out great content, and they have so much money and so much talent that like this anthology show called with all the climate change uh series. It's
Oh yes, I've been meaning to start that. I've heard it's good.
the cast is insane. You go from one episode with Streep to Edward Norton to just like some of the most famous people in Hollywood.
They had another anthology series that came out last year that was really good too. War. I don't know if you watched that. There's another anthology that was good too.
Mhm.
I'm trying to find it though, Shane. I can't for some reason I can't find it.
You're right.
But I mean, I don't I think it's right now, Shane. Extrapolations. That's what it is.
Extrapolation, yep.
Um, yeah, I've
But
been meaning
yeah,
to start this.
so like
Oh, snap! Kerry Russell, Forrest Whitaker, Marion Coulty, Shane,
so many famous people.
Diane Lane. Matthew Reed, Gemma Chan. Oh, Gemma Chan's okay. Gemma Chan's in there. Sienna Miller, Diane, David Diggs, Toby freaking Maguire.
Yeah,
Is he
because
playing
like
the guy from Babylon?
the most recent episode had Edward Norton in it.
I, I mean,
And
I yeah, I'm sure I might start this tonight.
there you go.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, I mean,
Matthew Reeves was in the first episode. I was trying to remember who like the really famous person from the first episode was. Um,
yeah, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there, but like, I just think Apple TV Plus Shane is because like I know everyone, probably the most bought service that everyone has is probably Netflix, right? Everyone probably has Netflix, and probably Disney Plus is second.
which is interesting because I think around this time Netflix may have lost market share to Amazon. The tricky thing
Interesting.
about Amazon is like how many people who have Amazon Prime Video have it for the video.
Not a lot. I can tell you
Yeah,
that.
so that's a tricky thing comparison wise, but like HBO Max was coming from Netflix, and then
Yeah.
all this stuff happened. So, and it'll be interesting to see them slowing down content on Disney.
I think it's the right move. At least on the Marvel side, they're slowing down
Yep.
content. I think they keep saying Star Wars is meant for the big screen. Shane, I've gone on record on the podcast and saying that I don't really give a shit about the movies anymore because they keep fumbling the ball too many times. I'm enjoying the stuff they're putting out on Disney Plus, where I'm just kind of like, okay,
Mhm.
I'll be ready for the movie. I'll be excited, Jane, but I just don't give a damn anymore because they keep fumbling the ball. They keep screwing up. So
Yep.
why should I care anymore?
But you know what? We can care about shrinking.
It's gonna be very, very hard for this show to leave like my top three of the year. It's gonna be very, very hard. There might be a show that might be better than this coming out this year, but I don't see it happening, Shane. I just don't.
It's been a strong start to the year between this and The Last of Us. It's good stuff.
Well, then because you said you're more of a movie person. I tend to lean a little bit more towards TV, Shane, just because I just when I'm working and stuff because I work from home, I tend to
Mhm.
like turn on TV in the background while I'm doing work or whatever. But because I can't watch 80 movies a day like you do. But oh, sorry, 80, 81, 81. My bad. My apologies. But this has been a good year for shows in general. There's a
Yep.
lot of good content out there. I haven't really watched a bad show. Well, The Consultant was fairly predictable and kind of underwhelming a little bit, but Christoph Waltz was great. So, um,
Understandable.
but yeah, I mean, you watch that show for Christoph Waltz and everything else is kind of forgettable. But Shrinking, I think it's going to
Number
be
one show of the year, Kunk on Earth.
Shrinking deserves a lot more attention, a lot more praise.
Yep.
I think once we kind of get out of this Succession craze we're in right now, I think people need to go subscribe to Apple TV Plus and check out Shrinking. Actually, because we're kind of in a Succession, Ted Lasso, Mando phase right now. So once people kind of that stuff dies down, do yourselves a favor, guys, and just watch Shrinking.
Yep.
I think I think it's going to happen. I think a lot of people are going to watch it over the summer. I know what's going to happen, especially when kids are out of school and stuff. I think you're going to see like a lot of college kids watching it and adults watching it. I think summertime you'll see people on Twitter and stuff talk about, like, man, Shrinking so good. I was on there since day one. No, you weren't, but
I was there on the weekly basis,
that's
watching
right.
it week to week.
That's right.
That's right. But Rod, obviously this is a great show, and hopefully everybody goes checks it out on Apple TV Plus. Maybe you shouldn't have listened to our thoughts until after you watched it. But you know what? We appreciate you listening anyway. But Rod, thank you so much for coming on.
Shane, it's always a pleasure. Thank you. It's always a great talking to you, and can't wait to have you back on our podcast shortly. So actually, next
Yeah.
week we're talking about Sean Levy. So I'm
Yeah,
excited.
we gotta figure out details.
Oh,
But
I have details, so we'll talk after.
thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.